Do you remember this case where my clients were confronted and one of them arrested on the front porch about some marijuana allegedly growing nearby? We filed a lawsuit about a year ago, and now we have a huge ruling from the court.
10-4, he owns two properties right here on this Baptist Drive. We located a marijuana grow, probably not 100 foot, 50 foot from this last property of his, and he just won't give us his name, date of birth. You own these two homes, correct?
Okay, these two homes got to do with that?
These two homes is near that marijuana grow, so I'd just like to have your name.
What does these houses on my property got? Did you find it on my property?
It's near your property.
Yeah.
My property has nothing to do with what you found.
Sir, if you refuse to give me your information, I'm going to arrest you.
That's fine. My property has nothing to do with any marijuana whatsoever.
Jason Tart, what is your date of birth? I'm going to arrest you if you don't give me your name and date of birth.
On August 7th of 2020, two McDowell County, West Virginia sheriff's deputies questioned a retired African-American couple about suspected marijuana plants being grown on several properties away from where the Hairstons resided. The questioning occurred outside the residence, which they rented from Jason Tart, who is also an African-American. Now, when the officers first arrived at the residence, the Hairstons anticipated a friendly encounter and nicely greeted them. They soon, however, realized that it was not a friendly encounter when the officers appeared agitated, questioned them as to whether they grew marijuana, and searched the exterior of their home.
I think it's important that I have your names.
What do you mean, ma'am?
Having your name makes me feel more secure. You know, we're actually new here.
Okay.
And for the police officers in this area to come up and say, "Are you growing marijuana?" That is preposterous to me. And when I say the season we're living in, you know the season we're living in.
And what do you mean by the season we're living in, ma'am?
Well, you scared me. I mean,
Scared you?
Who says that? Who,
By asking you a question?
who comes up and asks? That's crazy.
And it scared you?
I'm trying to understand what
It scared you by me asking you a question.
Growing marijuana?
And that's a question.
As Officer Martin described in his police report, upon our arrival we encountered two elderly subjects who were on the porch and asked them if they growed marijuana, and they stated no. During the encounter, the Hairstons summoned their landlord and neighbor, Mr. Tart, because they felt threatened by the officers and wanted to notify him that the officers were investigating his property. When Mr. Tart arrived, he joined the Hairstons on their front porch and told the officers his name when they asked. As the situation progressed, the officers grew more agitated and demanding, and these individuals, none of whom had any criminal history, quickly realized that the officers had no legitimate reason to suspect them of any wrongdoing or to be angry with them. They suspected that the officers were racially profiling them and violating their civil rights. Body camera footage of the interaction captured Mrs. Hairston expressing her fear to the officers and her statement that, in the season that we're living in, she would like to know the officers' names. Officer Martin mockingly responded, "I'll see if I can find my name," and never provided it. The officers then became angrier and demanded Mr. Tart's name, his date of birth, and such. But Mr. Tart decided not to provide more than his name because, based on his experience as a former military police officer, he believed that the officers were retaliating against him and the Hairstons for complaining about their treatment. To the shock of these individuals, Officer Martin then entered the front porch and seized Mr. Tart through physical force, verbal intimidation, and threats of violence.
You own these two homes, correct?
Okay, these two homes got to do with that?
These two homes is near that marijuana grow, so I'd just like to have your name.
What does these houses on my property got? Did you find it on my property?
It's near your property.
Yeah.
My property has nothing to do with what you found.
Sir, if you refuse to give me your information, I'm going to arrest you.
That's fine. My property has nothing to do with any marijuana whatsoever.
Jason Tart, what is your date of birth? I'm going to arrest you if you don't give me your name and date of birth.
You're going to arrest me if I don't give you my name and date of birth?
It's obstructing an officer.
How?
Because you're hindering me from doing my job. You're hindering
How
me from...
am I hindering you from doing your
Sir.
job if it's not on my property?
Last chance to give me your name and date of birth, sir.
How am I hindering you?
Sir, last chance to give me your name and date of birth.
How am I hindering you?
Place your hands behind your back. Place your hands behind your back. Are you going to give me your name and date of birth?
Take me to jail. You're right. I'm hindering you from doing your job. Please.
I'll see if I can find you my name first.
No, I'm hindering you from doing your
This
job.
is really going out off the
Yeah, this is how you guys...
This is bad.
This is,
112 control.
this is how you operate.
This is a wrap.
I'm hindering you from doing your
That's why
job.
I needed their...
Y'all need to go inside.
Officer Martin also physically prevented the Hairstons from filming the incident and shoved them back into their home, partially entering their home in the process. The officers then arrested Mr. Tart and charged him with obstruction of law enforcement. So everything I just read to you came out of a court order that was just issued yesterday. Now, about a year ago, if you watched the first video I did on this, we filed a lawsuit, Section 1983 civil rights lawsuit. We sued these two individual officers, but we also sued the county for what's known as a Monell claim, a pattern or practice of unconstitutional policy or actions, and also a somewhat rare 1985 claim for violation of civil rights based on the racial profiling allegations here. Since then, we've been in the discovery process. We actually did even have an early mediation because the other side was interested in perhaps settling the case, but we spent a whole day mediating the matter and we were unable to settle it. So we are proceeding with depositions at this point, but the big news is that we just received a memorandum order from the court ruling on the motion to dismiss that was filed by the county. So the claim against the county is what's called a Monell claim, again, a pattern or practice claim. And most people don't realize that a county or a municipality cannot claim qualified immunity. So far, the great news is that both of these claims, which are very difficult to get past a motion to dismiss, we have now successfully done that, and the court denied the defendant's motion to dismiss. Specifically on the claim against the county, the court held that the plaintiffs alleged that the county commission knew of and condoned prior instances of similar unconstitutional behavior, and that it failed to correct the issues to prevent these alleged constitutional injuries. And these allegations alone may satisfy the pleading standard for a Monell claim. The plaintiffs alleged that the sheriff's office supervisors knew of the allegedly unconstitutional conduct as it transpired, and two, that the sheriff's office failed to stop the allegedly unlawful prosecution of Mr. Tart, despite this actual knowledge, and that three, that Officer Martin trained Officer Horn in these unconstitutional practices, and that if the plaintiffs prove these allegations, a jury could find that the practices were customary of the sheriff's office, thereby establishing the county commission's liability. Secondly, on the Section 1985 conspiracy claim, the court held that in this case, the plaintiffs do not allege an express agreement between Officers Martin and Horn, nor would they likely have evidence of any such agreement before the discovery process. Instead, the plaintiffs put forth allegations that, if proven, represent circumstantial evidence that the officers acted in concert to deprive the plaintiffs of equal protection under the law. According to the plaintiffs' allegations, Officers Martin and Horn acted jointly to unlawfully seize the Hairstons and search their home, to unlawfully arrest Mr. Tart, and to unlawfully retaliate against plaintiffs for asserting their constitutional rights. Also, according to these allegations, the officers suspected plaintiffs of wrongdoing solely because of the race and attenuated proximity to the alleged marijuana plants. These allegations, taken as true, support a plausible inference that the officers acted in concert to discriminate against the plaintiffs. So, great news, we're moving forward on all charges, and as I explained in the prior video on this and other videos from around the country, the important fact here is that this is taking place within the curtilage of a private home. And police officers don't understand that the rules then change. If you are going to do anything above a consensual encounter, a knock and talk, if you are going to detain somebody against their will, or if you're going to arrest somebody, if you're within the curtilage of someone's home, you have to go get a warrant first. You can't just do it because you think you have reasonable suspicion and or probable cause. The fact that you're within the curtilage of a home, that changes the rules, unless you have actual voluntary consent or you have exigent circumstances because there's some sort of emergency occurring on the premises. If you want to continue to follow along, subscribe both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com, because there will definitely be updates on this one. We're getting ready to take the officers' depositions, and I really would like to see this case actually go to trial. So this is going to be one that you will hear about. Remember, freedom is scary. Deal with it.